let's get through this quick because I know that you are very interested in hearing the interview with Chris. So this podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. You can try out their service and get a free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/watch out for fireballs. You can get it for any device that you have, any book that you want to get. And yeah, let's go listen to this awesome interview.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And I am Chris Avellone.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs, a very special episode of Watch Out for Fireballs, a retro games podcast.
Yes, and as you heard, we are joined by Chris Avellone, appropriately to talk about Fallout 2, since this is part of the companion episode for our conclusion, the wrap-up to that game. Thank you very much, Chris.
Hey, well, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have some kind of, we try to do our little discussion just so kind of questions and points will come up before we have anybody on. And we've got some questions here. We're just kind of going to go back and forth, but anything, any digressions or any such points that you want to make are welcome. And, we also recognize this was a long time ago, that the game came out. So if it seems like I
may be sketchy on parts, but I will do my best to recall to the best of my ability.
This isn't a deposition. I don't want you to feel like it's not a deposition. I just don't want you to think that we're holding your feet to the fire if we ask, anything that is insanely. We have it very fresh in our memory. Yeah. I guess is my only point.
So that's great. So I'm not going to Mirandize him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's probably some kind of podcasting code that you're supposed to. Supposed to do that, but we don't play by those rules. We have an unrated or an adult rating on iTunes, and we get away with breaking all of the.
You guys are a podcast on the edge. There's no way the local authorities are going to slow you guys down. You're going to get your man.
I'm broadcasting from sea. I don't know if you know about that, but international waters are no rules.
They'll never find me.
Yeah.
Chris, I know a guy that can turn anyone or anything into beef jerky. If you have any needs, you let me know. International waters.
That sounds great.
Specifically,
my
beef.
Dietary habits are like I used to have like nothing but drawers that just fill with beef jerky. Just I'm like, you know what? I have craving for meat and I don't feel like getting up. So Anyway, I eventually stopped after a while because the sodium intake. Anyway, complete divergence from your questions, from your thoughts about Fallout 2. I will steer it back on course, and here we are.
I kind of want to hear more about these tactical jerky reserves.
Oh my God! Every kind of flavor, and then actually, people actually used to bring beef jerky back from their trips for me. I think they felt sorry for me, or they wanted to feed me in my cage or something. It was really embarrassing.
What is the most unusual animal you have eaten a jerky of?
Let's see. Actually, I don't know if I've eaten a particularly unusual type of jerky. I knew that. I've tried the turkey jerky and the strange pepperoni jerky, or whatever the hell it is, and then someone brought back some alien jerky from like some casino town on the way to Vegas, which I skeptically had some of, and it wasn't too bad until like about an hour and a half later, and then it all came like shooting out of my ass. But maybe that was the plan. I don't know, but but no, that what? I guess I don't have an unusual jerky story. But Gary, if you do happen to kill anybody, and you happen to share some jerky with me, and don't happen to describe where it came from, chances are I may have unusual jerky without even. So.
Yeah. What if this whole podcast thing was just a ruse to get you on our beef jerky podcast?
Yeah.
And we heard about your legendary love of jerky and reserve.
Sold.
Yep.
Sold. You've got a willing volunteer here. I will be on that show anytime, anywhere.
And we're looking
for
Jerky
Boys is what we call it.
We're looking for investors in our no questions asked jerky label.
Yeah.
Just jerky pranks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just jerky pranking.
Yeah, How do we recover from that?
Segue.
I think we should just go with the jerky from now on.
Yeah.
That's what Fallout 2 really needed.
Well, there is the jerky vendor.
There is, yes.
We have a lot of questions about the jerky vendors. No, that's not true.
And there was good old Iguana Bob in Fallout 1, and man, creepy.
Oh. So I'm going to bite one of Gary's questions here and ask, when you were brought on to Fallout 2, were you a fan of the first one?
I was. It was developed under the radar. sort of at Interplay, and like I don't know if you guys know the whole history, but originally it was supposed to be a GURPS game. You know, it was supposed to be like a spiritual successor to the Wasteland game that came out from Interplay like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And then so Tim Kaine and the crew turned it out. They made a awesome RPG. It took off in a way that the executives did not expect. They weren't sure how the game would be received, so they were like, just turn it out there. We don't have to put like a huge marketing push behind it. And then people went crazy over it, and they should have, because it was a great game and had a lot of really cool design innovations that I had never seen before, like that whole stat-based dialogue, the fact you get all this stupid conversations, that you could plant explosives on people, and there's like multiple ways to solve quests, and just like the story and the characters were just really good. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it, and I got asked if I would actually work on Fallout 1 because I needed some writing help, and I still kick myself in the ass to this day that I didn't say yes. But no, I wanted to work on a horrible product called Descent to Undermountain, which does not speak to the people working on it who worked very hard, but it was just a project that was a bad idea, but nevertheless I felt compelled that I had to see that the work done on it. So I had to say no to Fallout 1, and telling Tim Kaine that no, I would not be able to work on Fallout 1 was one of the saddest days I can recall. But anyway, another sad day was Fallout 2 got fired up at Interplay, and it went through a few story iterations before Tim and the crew, like Leonard Biarski and Jason Anderson, the sort of the triumvirate there, they eventually came back on board to do the quote-unquote real version of the Fallout 2 storyline, and then they departed Interplay not long after that. So when that happened, our division director of Black Isle, Fergus Urquhart, came in, grabbed all the designers, and said, "Okay, well, we've got the area specs for Fallout 2. We've got like these 1 or 2 page descriptions of some of the locations. Now we're going to divide these up amongst all of you, and let's get rolling on this game." So I got the Raiders, I got New Reno, I got a chance to finish up the work that had been done on Vault City, and then I got to do the special encounters as well, and all of that was a lot of fun.
Can you kind of going through this, like something I always wonder when I really kind of mythologize a game I played. Like, what was like the kind of environment like when you were working there? Like what was it like back in at that time?
Oh man, so during Fallout 2, I'll be honest, it was a very desperate feel to Black Isle and just Interplay in general. Like we were having a pretty bad year, which was going to be a habit that was going to continue for many more years after that. But Fallout 2 had to get out within a certain period of time, or else it would cause a lot of damage to the company, and a lot of people would get laid off. So there was that time pressure with development for Fallout 2. So that was pretty rough. We had the Baldur's Gate series, which were doing pretty well for us, but in terms of carrying the entire company, that was pretty hard. And in addition, I was getting pretty stressed out because I was actually working on Planescape Torment at the same time I was working on Fallout 2. So trying to juggle both of those was an insane amount of hours, which of course didn't end once Fallout 2 was over, because then I immediately went full time on a Torment, and then the hours pretty much stayed the same. But at least it was focused on one product. So there was a lot of time pressure to get the game out. We were really worried about everyone keeping their jobs. There was a lot of long hours, but being there in the frontline trenches and developing all that content and getting to work, with the whole studio and pushing towards, releasing this Fallout, releasing Fallout 2 was a really great experience looking back on it, despite all the stress.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So kind of looking at that structure, kind of how everybody was kind of handed these different areas, kind of the natural result of that is that Fallout 2 kind of has a different tone and structure than Fallout 1 itself. Was that a conscious effort, or did that just kind of happen naturally, as a result of the people working on it, the environment that you guys were in at the time?
I think it was more the people that were placed on it. I think by themselves, the actual locations and the tone that was intended for Fallout 2 would have been much different had Tim and Leonard and Jason remained on the project all the way to the end. Fallout 2 is sort of my case study for what happens when you don't have one strong vision holder or one strong creative director sort of guiding things, right. Because you always need somebody like that making sure that no one goes too far off course with, references or tone or an area that doesn't quite fit with the rest of the game. So while each individual area had its own kind of interesting flavor about it, I don't know whether it ended up being as cohesive a whole as it could have been had there been more oversight over some areas. And I'm absolutely guilty of that. Like New Reno feels, pretty different than other parts of the game. San Francisco certainly feels very different. The stuff in Vault City, basically there are some areas where it just feels like the quests and the dialogue and the references are not quite as I've already used the word cohesive, but I guess they don't all feel like they're always part of the same world, and I think the game was kind of hurt by that. But then again, to balance that out, there's like tons of fun stuff to do in Fallout 2. Like you can run around just about everywhere. There's tons of stuff to find. The quest lines, even if they go in odd directions, there's still a lot of quests and things to do. So I think players appreciated that. And then some of the best compliments I ever got about New Reno was, even if they don't like the tone, they did appreciate that for each of the character builds, at least there was a lot of cool stuff to do, and that was a conscious effort. So I think the areas ended up being partly successful that way, but I think with a stronger creative lead and vision holder, the game could have been even better. And I think a lot of the Fallout 1 fans at the time would have appreciated that more because a lot of them were pretty unhappy when Fallout 2 got released because it was so over the top and there were so many inside jokes and references, and some of that I can attribute to junior designer-itis. We're like, oh wow, I'm working in a real world setting, but I can cuss and do all these things, so I'm going to slip every reference I can, and I completely did. So now that I'm a little bit older and wiser, I always try and make sure with junior designers that come on board that that's not the way to go about creating entertaining content, and there's other ways to do it. So an Old World Blues is kind of like a nod to that. Like there's ways of creating humor and comedy that mesh with the overall world aesthetic, where you don't have to include every reference to every other video game and inside joke and wink wink and ha 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 and Darth Vader stuff. You just don't need to do that. So.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of despite the or kind of in line with that, there are parts of Fallout 2 that get really kind of racy as well, which was kind of a total difference, especially in New Reno, which is your baby.
It is filthy. That is one filthy.
It's so gross.
We should say too, that's unanimously Cole and I's favorite area of the game. Like we spent a lot of time talking about, that feeling almost like we kind of picked up on that otherness. Like it almost felt like an expansion for the game. Like it had the amount of content and was its own kind of separate area, like a quest hub on a scale that wasn't elsewhere in the game.
Those areas took a long time to load back then too. There was so much stuff in New Reno that it consumed a good chunk of my design time. And I think it's also a reason why the area where the raiders are is kind of sparse, is because so much energy was being dumped into New Reno. But I went a little nutty with the quest lines and the stuff you could do, and I think part of it was when I originally got the area summary that the original Tim, Leonard, Jason had set up for New Reno. They had a lot of content present in that location, and I wanted to make sure I included that plus more stuff. And I think that was probably an unwise decision. I think if I had knocked one of the families out, for example, and then downscaled some of the other stuff, I could have made it a little bit more manageable location. But that being said, it was a hell of a lot of fun to do that stuff. Like I enjoyed having all the stealth ways for killing all the mob bosses, and doing extortion and doing the murder mystery, and I don't know. And then, I got to write Myron, and writing Myron was fun, even though I thought he was a pretty unsuccessful character overall. But I still enjoyed doing that. So I had a lot of fun with it, and I certainly hope people that played through it also had a good time, because I just try to make sure there is as much variation for character builds as possible in that location.
specifically with all the fluffing and such that goes on there. Was there any of it that was hard to get out or was too racy? Anything you wanted to do, like you wanted to push it in that area and didn't, kind of scaled back?
Actually, the sort of the sex tone and the raciness actually helped me write quite a few times. And I think in Old World Blues, I think that's why Dala and 8, have their little nods to being oversexed, just because sometimes it's a little bit more fun to write characters like that. In New Reno, there were a few things I think we had to downplay. One was, there was certain language that we eventually had to take out. Like, as filthy as the town was, it was, considerably filthier before the edit. And then I think that there were some sequences with Myron that were just like, QA was like, nope. So, and I completely understood why. So yeah, it all eventually worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And segueing, kind of speaking of Myron too. One of the things, and this is kind of a long, involved point, but if you'll bear with me here, one of the things I really love about Myron is when you talk about him being unsuccessful as a character, to me it kind of spoke to kind of design in the face of a win state, like flying against a win state, where he's not a very good NPC. He's not going to be very helpful, but he's so interesting, and he's also a bad person. So you're not motivated by helping him or a desire to help. You're just motivated by kind of the depth and him being interesting. Is that something that was conscientious? Can you speak at all to that kind of design philosophy? It's something I also argue a little bit for kind of Gorus and Skynet, which I know you didn't design, but that's one of the things I really love about Fallout 2 is that there are things in the game that you can do purely for the sake of doing them that don't actually advance, your character or make it easier to win.
Yeah, that's a good point. My companion design philosophy actually got forged out of Fallout 2 and all the mistakes that I saw there. And not to downplay Myron, like I certainly enjoyed designing him and writing him, but he was the first example that taught me a majority of players will not take this companion because, quite frankly, that companion does not add that much to the system mechanics in the game. What you want to do is you want to have characters that join your party that serve some sort of active function. Like, they don't have to be like combat monsters, but they have to be helpful in some way. And characters like Myron, who, granted he can, make stem packs and stuff, but is that really useful? Like, do I really need a high science skill? Other than that, Myron's pretty, useless. But especially when you read all the forum posts and people much prefer like Bone Nose and Cassidy and Vic because of their weapon loadouts and how good they get at higher levels, and all of that makes sense to me. It's just a matter of when you do companions, it's very difficult for players to get motivated by someone that's basically dead weight. And I thought that in particular Myron, and I believe Lenny the ghoul.
Oh, yeah.
Points. Yeah, Lenny's basic function is to sit there and be shot, which is not a compelling companion system mechanic. That is not something that you want to build a character around in terms of stats. So that's something that I try and watch out for in future companion designs. Like, if you have a character that's not a combat monster, what else do they add to the party? Like, do they give some advantage in dialogue? They provide some sort of system boost. And usually, and I know this might cause some people to tear their hair out when they hear this, but I always thought the Final Fantasy games, notably Final Fantasy III, taught me that you can have a wide spectrum of character types, and there's a way to make them each valuable with the system mechanics and each give them their own individual flavor at the same time. And that's what you want to shoot for when doing companion design too. So you still have that spectrum of, hey, he's an interesting personality, I'd like to adventure with him, but at the same time they're not dead weight. They're still actually adding something to your party, but you're able to make the choice among those companions about which ones you want to join your party. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, I don't end up taking him, to the enclave or anything, but I always make a point of recruiting him because he's so fun to interact with.
Yeah.
And then this playthrough, I took him alone into the mines, the Wanamingo mines, and let him die there. So
the Wanamingos. Oh boy, man, I hate those guys.
Myron's kind of like, it's kind of like picking up a book. Right, because he is like this mythological figure in that his creation basically devastated all these communities around, and just taking that opportunity to learn about him and then do that quest to cure jet addiction, like that, like he seems really purely story, and I made a point to seek him out specifically because of that. And if he was a learning experience, it seems like you learn pretty quick because Planescape was right on the other side of that, and that is a really good example of what you're talking about.
I think one of my favorite parts about writing Myron was just if you have the high intelligence, the high science, arguing him out of his own. Well, there's no way to cure this, and then you start like presenting all the counter options, and then suddenly he realizes you're smarter than he is, and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe you're right about this." Like I always love when players can do that turnabout with someone who thinks that they're like the shit, and I think that's a very Fallout-y thing to do. Like with the Master in Fallout 1, when you can outline why his plan is a complete disaster. I think was one of the best moments in gaming I've ever had. So, yeah, being able to do that with Myron, and then I think when I got the character concept, they just said, "Hey, he's just a really high science guy," and I'm like, well, rather than rescue him from the crime family, maybe the crime family's treating him so well that he's actually really having a good time, and also he's a despicable human being. And then I didn't want like an old science guy. I actually wanted like a kid because I thought that would be more interesting. But but Myron was fun to play around with.
Yeah. So. You kind of keep saying, or not keep saying, it is a true thing. You came to Vault City and finished up. Can you tell me a little bit about how it was when you got there, and then kind of what you did for that? Because if New Reno is our established favorite area, like Vault City is pretty close behind.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. That was the work of 3 different designers, I believe, and again, I hope the public can forgive me if I've got the references wrong, but I think Leonard Boyarsky did a lot of the layout for Vault City, and it might have been Jason Anderson. It was one of the original 3 guys, and then Fergus, our division director, took it over for a few months, and then once I finished up the New Reno stuff, I got put onto Vault City, and then the basic core quest there was pretty much intact. Like, hey, find a way past the walls, take the citizenship test, deal, with their very repressive view of the outside world, and then find out more information about to continue the quest. So after that was all implemented, and figuring out all the interactions with Gecko, which took forever. Like, forgive me, but the design for Gecko, there were so many quest flags that never seemed to click or work, and trying to get that all fixed with Vault City was a huge pain in the ass and a drain on my time, and I'm still frustrated about it to this day. But overall, so one of the things that Vault City clearly needed once I jumped in there was just more fun side quests. So, I added a whole bunch to the outside, and then, cool ways to use luck with that damaged auto dock if you wanted to fuck around with that, or, finding the little doll, or selling your, if you're stupid, you get sold into slavery, and then all the different ways you could solve those quests, and then, smuggling the alcohol in, and then, trying to ask the nurse in the downstairs vault out on a date, but then, the date doesn't go so well, so you try and find a way to slip away because it's so terrible, and then, finding all the I think finding all the water chips at the bottom of Vault City, I think, was a joke that the original Troika guys had put in there, which we thought was pretty funny. So we wanted to make sure that was still intact. But yeah, and also if you guys ever want any fun advice, if you ever become captain of the guard, or you're able to sneak like Marcus, the super mutant, down into the depths of Vault City and have him use that auto dock, you can get a shit ton of ammo when he runs the auto dock, because they find all this, they find all these shells still embedded in his body over the last 200 years or so. So, but it's a really hard thing to do, but it's pretty gratifying if you can pull it off. There's tons of little Easter eggs in there that were just fun to play around with.
It's hard primarily because of Lynette. Were you responsible for Lynette?
The Jason/Leonard was the one who designed the character and also the look of the character. And then after that, I did an asshole pass through her, and she is just
well done, sir.
She is the biggest wench. And that was fun to write too, because she just does all this stuff to needle you. You're just but if you put up with all of it then like you get that nice reward at the end. But being able to humiliate and break her, and then is also kind of fun too, just because she's so arrogant. You're just like, ugh. But yeah, I know. But the original character concept came from the original Troika guys, and then I just had fun fleshing it out. I think also to give credit where credit is due, there was a designer, Mark O'Green, who actually used to be the head of what used to be Black Isle. It was called like Dragon Play. He actually did the core writing for the Fallout 1 heads, like all the talking heads, and he also did a pass of all the dialogue for the Fallout 2 talking heads. So some of the dialogue that you see for those characters is stuff that he added in, although at the end I also did a pass through it again and then just put in stuff that I really liked too. But Mark was all okay with it, so that was cool.
Yeah, something just on a personal level, something I've referred to a couple times on the show, was that encounter was really kind of formative for me because at some point I had a realization that it was a boss fight. Like it felt like a boss fight to me, but entirely dialogue based. Like the way that she's kind of needling you, the way she's trying to tempt you into doing the wrong thing. And that's just something that's, I don't really have a question attached to that. It's just something that I've always appreciated about her. And just, knowing that, I could tell that there was some kind of intelligence behind, she's a studied form of bitchcraft. Like she is not, it's not a tornado through a junkyard forming a 747.
She was the example of if you just had speech skills and wanted to pursue that path, she was like the prime example of where speech skills could shine and clearly gave you an advantage in a diplomatic situation. Like she was sort of like the sort of acid test for that. Also, and I don't know if you guys encountered this, but she has mentats stuck in her office, and I intentionally put that there to show that she's a hypocrite. And as much as she hates drugs coming in from the outside world, she will gladly take mentats if she needs to, to give her an intelligence boost. So I wanted to make sure that hypocrisy was also present in the environment around her too.
Yeah, definitely. That is a Lynette. So kind of talking about the importance of speech in the game. That's generally what I do in any of these games is try and play a talky stabby dude.
Yay!
Yeah,
I know. I love those character builds.
Yeah. But there are so many other ways to go about it. I mean, notably the stupid runs, which must have taken just a lot of resources. But I kind of want to ask you, what's your personal favorite way to go about it, and do you have a way that you recommend people try to play?
I think that speech is always my favorite. I always just bump up my intelligence as high as I can go, and my charisma, and I max out all my speech skills just because I want all the dialogue options. And then the ability just to solve quests through talking. And I think that if you haven't played Fallout with a character like that, you're really missing out. And you should probably leave the dumb experience for after you've gone through the game once, just so you can see how the other half lives. Because a lot of the ways to solve various quests in Fallout 2 with a dumb character is pretty amazing and funny. So I think the game does change pretty dramatically. But yeah, usually I just go full on speech, and then I allow my combat monster companions to help me out if I need to. But talking is the way to go for me.
It turns these games into a book, into a choose your own adventure kind of thing. And Gary and we always talk about being content hounds. The best reward for playing well is to see more of a thing, and being able to read just more of this dialogue. That is more important to me than seeing Gibbs and stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I totally agree.
You spoke a little bit earlier about the fan community for Fallout, which is really enthusiastic. And, they've kind of taken it upon themselves to do patches and restoration efforts and the like. Probably largely a result of the Fallout Bible that you did for a while, which kind of shed light on a lot of the inner workings. Is that something that you, as a designer, is that something that you kind of appreciate and trust them to do that? Do you just want, the pieces are there, play with them? Or is there any part of it that, do you feel like they're not, maybe for lack of a better phrase, getting it right?
I love seeing all the restoration mods. I love just seeing any modding work done on not just Fallout, but just about any game out there, because I think that seeing people's system design and sort of content design perspectives on the setting and the cool things they do with it, I think just makes the entire experience richer. Like when we were doing Old World Blues, we were able to go through all the mods that people had created for New Vegas and we're able to look at those to see what people were missing about the core game experience and be able to incorporate elements of that into it. And a lot of that stuff we wouldn't realize was so important to people had we not seen those mods, nor would we have been able to see all the amazing things that people could do with the mods that we had never even considered. Like, I mean, it's like having 100, 1,000 plus designers suddenly let loose on the scripting and finding all sorts of fun things that you and your team of 50 or 60 would never have had time or the, perspective to realize you could do that. And just see those things come out from just from the community has been, pretty awesome. And also I think the way people take certain sections of the Fallout world and just develop it, has been also kind of interesting too. I ran into a game journalist at the time. His name was Christopher Means at an Austin game developers conference, and he mentioned that he was doing this Fallout mod that took place in Texas, which of course I immediately responded to because I think that Texas would be a great place for a Fallout game. Yeah. So then most recently he started up this mod called, I believe it's called Fallout Lone Star, and it takes place in the Texas Commonwealth, and he recruited a bunch of people, across the world to help out with it. He got one of the writers for the Banner Saga, Drew McGee to pitch in for it, and he's got a team he's assembling, and he's got all the design docs laid out, and he's building the world, the character concepts, and seeing an energy like that Fallout was able to spark in somebody is just really morale boosting from my perspective. So I'm like, wow, this is actually encouraging people to go out and create more entertainment themselves, using those tools. So seeing that is just really exciting to see.
Yeah.
And this isn't so much it's kind of a question, but so one of the things you mentioned, we've talked about Old World Blues a few times, just because I feel like in New Vegas, we've talked about it before and kind of said that Fallout 3 is kind of the sequel to Fallout 1, and New Vegas is kind of the sequel to Fallout 2. And Old World Blues kind of captures a lot of some of the goofier elements of it. One of the things I just want to see if it is my imagination, is that Old World Blues seems like it took a lot of touchstones from some content that was cut from Fallout 2. Specifically, in this playthrough, I was noticing kind of shades of what I've read about the EPA, a little bit in kind of the sink and everything. Is that my imagination, or is that something?
No, you are correct. For example, the talking toaster idea did come from a super intelligent toaster you'd find in the EPA, which then again was taken from Red Dwarf. So there's a chain of references there. A lot of the stuff in Old World Blues was intended to sort of shed some more historical light on the Fallout universe, but to be honest, as we were developing it, we discovered there was a lot of lore stuff that we couldn't go into, so it wasn't quite as broad as we had intended. We wanted more power armor variations and more looking into what Vault Tech was all about, but that was considered a little bit too sensitive to the core of Fallout, so we ended up dealing with a lot of periphery stuff, but things like hey, here's how brain bots are constructed. Here's how certain old pre-war constructions were done. Here's all the source of all the technology and their DLCs in New Vegas, and so that was interesting to do. Although a lot of the stuff for Old World Blues actually was referencing stuff that we'd done for the first iteration of Van Buren. And the things like the Boulder Dome, was supposed to have a large number of disembodied scientist brains. It wasn't a goofy location, but it was supposed to be a central science area. And the Big Empty was supposed to be this automated military boot camp you could find in Van Buren that was run by crazy Mr. Handies that would put you through all your paces. But so the end result in Old World Blues is a lot different, but it did definitely have its foundation in some Fallout 2 references and the Van Buren game and pen and paper game.
So when you were approaching, Fallout 2 and then this, content for Fallout New Vegas, so much later, was there or is there some kind of Bible, for lack of a better / not already used term, of commandments that thou shalt not approach this because Fallout, so something that was, just kind of held back in reserve, or a rule that you couldn't break?
I think a lot of the reason we were on the west coast of the United States and New Vegas was just to give the East Coast more breathing room to sort of design as it will without us like, crossing the streams, as it were.
Right.
So I think that was part of our mandate for even having sort of like a more California slash Mojave based experience for New Vegas. So that was one thing. Generally, we always had to be careful of elements regarding some of the core factions, like how you treat the Brotherhood of Steel was a big one. How you handle power armor, like sort of the core Fallout stuff. We had to be careful about how we developed some of those aspects. But Bethesda was always very open to discussing those things, and we usually had a pretty strong case for why we might want to develop a faction a certain way that they were usually quite on board with, and if for whatever reason they weren't, they usually had a pretty good reason as to why. So that it was a pretty good working relationship. But I think it's because we just our studio had been so focused on the West Coast at Black Isle for so long that a lot of our concepts didn't really overlap too much with what they'd done in Fallout 3 or might intend for the future, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just kind of wrapping up just a little bit. So you talked a little bit about companion design being something you took from Fallout 2 and kind of having that unified voice. Is there anything else that you feel like you really carried forward with it? Because you've been real prolific. You have a lot of projects in the hopper right now. This wave of Kickstarter RPGs. Thing like what are the single biggest lesson that you've taken from Fallout 2?
Fallout 2, I think the biggest lesson was, if you give the player the ability to create a certain type of character, make sure that you honor the player's character build. And what I mean by that is, if you allow a character to dump 500 points into speech, make sure that they have an experience that's very cool and is appropriate for a speech-based character. And the same thing is true as if you're a stupid combat monster, if you're a sneaky thief who no one ever sees. If you're allowing the players to create a character like that with a rule set, then make sure that you're designing content that supports that experience. And it may sound like a very simple thing to say, but sometimes there are games that will allow you to sort of like design yourself into a hole with your character where you won't end up doing anything cool at all because you didn't make the right type of character for the game. And I think that's a design flaw that no good game designer should ever fall into.
Yeah, that's tremendous. I mean, that just sounds like respect the player's time and respect their choices.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it's something. A game that we've done for the show that I very dearly love is Bloodlines. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. And that has, for 80%, it's frustrating because for 80% of the game, that's true. And then you get to the end and all of a sudden, if you're playing a talky, hacky character, you run out of things to do. Same thing like boss fights in Human Revolution, things like that, where I agree with that. That's something that we pointed out several times in games where it succeeds and where, it's kind of fallen down. And not to disparage anybody who made those games. Like, I like both those games a whole lot. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, and contrast that with, Fallout 2 with the Enclave, where you can get through it without killing everybody. Like, the Enclave doesn't have to be a combat dungeon.
Yeah, although I do have one sticking point about that. I do think that speech characters get robbed in the Enclave. I feel like even though you're allowed to recruit some of the Enclave soldiers there at the end, it still does reduce it to a fight fest with Horrigan at the end, which disappointed me a bit. Even though there's other ways to sort of like get through the rig for different character builds, I still felt that speech got a little bit of a short end of the stick there.
Yeah. So, especially with the president, right?
Yeah.
Just that there's no way to sway him.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just, again, by way of wrap up, this is something that we like to ask, is there anything that you're playing right now that you're currently just like really jazzed about?
Well, let's see. I've been playing a few things. I have played The Wolf Among Us. I checked out the first episode for that, and I was really enjoying it because I'm a big. I've read a good chunk of the Fables comics, and seeing that as a video game, especially with Telltale, seemed like a really good fit. Obviously, only the first episode's out, so I checked that out. What else have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of the Wasteland 2 beta, and even though I've had areas that I've laid out for Wasteland 2, being able to play the other areas and then being able to explore the Wasteland has been a lot of fun. I didn't realize exactly how much I missed old school role playing until I kicked that up, and the same thing with Shadowrun Returns when I kicked it on. Started playing that too. Like having that sort of like isometric old school feel was pretty sweet. And I was also checking out Papers, Please. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's basically so I was checking that out too, and I was strangely entertained by it, even though I'm not sure I was supposed to be entertained by it. But yeah, I was having a blast with that too. But overall, those are some of the things that I've been playing, and you're able to sort of like take cool design elements from each one and sort of appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah, and real quick, talking about old school role-playing games, while I have you on, Mike, I'd be remiss if I play, do some tabletop gaming myself. Do the characters that you like to play in D&D, do they follow kind of your Fallout philosophy? Do you kind of try to play talky characters, or what's your D&D build?
No. So what I do is I usually spend 2 or 3 sessions gauging the GM because there are certain GMs that are cool with role-playing. Some of them are just, like big tactical monsters where every adventure is a big sort of like big fight sequence or big encounter sequence. And all that stuff is fine. It's just that you have to make sure you know that when building the character going in, and then adjust the character concept to fit that. Mm-hmm. If given the choice, I think the most favorite character I've been doing is I created. I was actually playing one of the companions for the new Torment game in some Numenera pen and paper games, and he. I wouldn't say he's a talking character, but basically the fact that he's just basically a walking series of impulses and doesn't give much thought to the thing that happens next has been actually a really entertaining gaming experience for me, because I find it actually cuts through a lot of the bullshit when it comes to the rest of the party trying to plan to attack a certain thing or how to approach a certain location. I just charge right in, and I will let the chips fall as they may. And that playing around with the character concept like that supports that, I think, has been a lot of fun too. So it's been kind of me stretching my legs with new ways of role playing. Although I do like talking and trying to outwit opponents, but I usually find that stuff just always goes to shit within 20 seconds of the actual encounter. So yeah. I feel like there's only so much preparation you can do. So.
Yeah. I think that. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah. No, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a wonderful opportunity.
Well, guys, thanks so much for inviting me. I was really flattered you guys asked.
Yeah, and absolutely.
And so, if people are listening, the next thing coming out, I believe, is going to be the full Wasteland 2, which you contributed to.
Correct. Yeah, and again, spiritual successor to the first Wasteland, and that's the game that sort of gave Fallout its genesis. So it's and Wasteland 2 certainly it's from what I've played, I'm having a great time with it, and I'm sure people will too.
Yeah. And I am awaiting the new Torment with bated breath. So
I do not think you'll be disappointed. It has a lot in common with the first game, and we've got an incredible set of developers and writers all working on it. So I think people will be pretty impressed.
This is a weird. I would have never, just looking at the concept for Kickstarter, never would have thought that it would kick off this golden age for.
I love Kickstarter just for that reason. Like if you don't have to make a multi-million-dollar console title to be successful. Yep. Just figure out who your audience is. Like explain what your parameters are. Ask them for support as opposed to a publisher. And don't get me wrong. Like there's lots of benefits of working with publishers, but it's a lot easier having a discussion with you guys about why doing a Fallout style or a Torment style game, would be something that you'd want to see versus trying to explain that, to someone who might be several steps removed from that game. That's a much different process, and one's a lot more fun than the other.
Yeah. From looking at it from the outside, kind of this wave. Since I'm just a fan of these things. The sense of relief when Shadowrun Returns came out and was good.
Oh yeah.
I understand there are different people working on all of these, but that was kind of the first big Kickstarter thing to come out, and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
good times ahead. It's a little bit of an unknown quantity, and there's always the fear that things will, just kind of get, not come out and just kind of get delayed forever. And then this came out.
Yeah, and that was good to see. And then there's so many fun new ideas that are just getting realized. Not only are like old franchises being resurrected, in great ways, like with Shadowrun, but like Cards Against Humanity. Like please, like almost all my friends play that at one time or another, and they have a great time with it. And that would have been something that it would have been a very hard sell with most traditional card game companies and board game companies. That concept by itself, but then you throw Kickstarter into it and people like respond, and now we have a brand new fun and form of entertainment out there, and like just seeing elements like that has just been really, really encouraging. So yeah, and then I've got God knows how many hours I waste with FTL.
Yeah,
but, I love that game, and I'm just like I'm just glad that there's an option for people that want to publish styles of games like this, because it's just been very gratifying, and selfishly it makes me happy. So that's the important thing.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, yeah. Have a great night. Thank you again.
Yes.
Well, Gary and Cole, again, thank you very much for having me on board. It's a pleasure to sort of walk down memory lane with Fallout 2. So thank you very much for the questions.
Yeah, the episode will be out this Thursday. We'll probably shoot you a line to notify you when it's up, so you can make sure we didn't do any incriminating editing or whatever.
Don't worry about it.
We did talk about New Reno, so if we wanted to splice things up,
you should just beep the entire podcast.
As I was making that joke, I realized I was the one that was talking about fluffing, so all I could do is edit it to make me
to make you sound like the monster.
And then just have you call me monster over and over when you say combat monster.
Oh man. Well, guys, I better get back to the old grind here, but it was a pleasure to actually sort of break away from the grind of the day and actually have a conversation about fun game stuff.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Like if we end up doing anything else you're involved in, do you mind if we drop you a line?
You absolutely may. It would be my pleasure to help out however I can.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Well, all right, guys.
All right. Have a good night.
So that was our interview with Chris.
Yeah, I am still riding high from that. He is a very nice man.
Yeah, what a sweetheart.
Yeah,
what a sweetheart. That was really, really fun, and I was, as you the audience may listen and judge how goony I came off of, but I was a little bit moon-eyed about the whole thing.
Yeah.
As again, 2 years of podcasting. We'll reference how many times I dropped that guy's name.
Yeah,
so
has underlined.
A big deal, like being doing the show and then introducing, being able to interview Ron, who kind of designed a lot of my childhood, and then Chris, who did a lot of my kind of adulthood. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
So, good job, us.
Way to go.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. But also important are your responses.
Most certainly.
Fallout 2. Now, we're not going to say more important.
Yep.
But also important.
Yes. Also things that are said aloud.
Yes. So we got some more responses from the last episode, which is good.
Yeah.
And Cole, why don't you start us off with Christopher?
Yeah, so some of these are pretty lengthy. I didn't edit them as much because I figured, hey, it's Fallout 2. It's a big game. So, if I need to take a breather in the middle of one, I will tag you in, Gary, but I do not expect that.
Let's come up with a code phrase. What's our safe word?
Banana? Yeah. All right. So Banana Man. Yes. Yeah. So Christopher via contact says, so Fallout 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. I remember, quote, renting it from a library when I was in high school, right around the time when it came out. After I first began it, I decided that it was worth it to fake being sick for a week so I could stay home and do nothing but play it. It was my first CRPG of this sort. I mean, I remember playing Ultima, but it was never anything like Fallout 2. I must say I disagree with Cole's apparent dislike of the combat system in this one. It's easily my favorite. Sure, Jagged Alliance is probably better, but I still have a love for it. I definitely prefer turn-based over anything else. Of course, I think I'm biased since I stink at combat and real-time nonsense. And the music is phenomenal. It's not the sort I'd listen to outside of the game, but in-game I love the ambiance of it. And while the story is probably not as consistent as Fallout, God, I still love this game more than the first one. It was just more Fallout. and I'm a sucker for random references. And if Cole ever decides to replay it down the line, I know he has quite the backlog, so who knows, definitely do it with a restoration patch. I'm curious, though. Cole, do you really not like the turn-based combat?
I haven't read this before. This is not me, and I didn't write this under a pseudonym, and I did not read it before. So
I'm curious, though. Cole, do you really not like the turn-based combat, or was it just the deadline? I can imagine myself getting annoyed at it if I was trying to get through it quickly. In general, CRPGs are best played slowly. I think I'm biased since this ended up being my first of this sort of game. I ended up preferring it to real time, and I would kill to have Planescape Torment with a combat similar to Fallout. Then again, anything differing from its current combat would be an improvement. It's a shame that they improved the story and character development but went backwards on combat. Anyways, I love Fallout 2. It was the first of this sort of game that I ever played, and I never looked back. And while I know Fallout will never go back to this style, it does make me look forward to Wasteland 2. Love me some isometric goodness.
Thanks, Christopher.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for putting me on blast. So
you're fine.
Yeah. No, definitely. So you know, like most instances, I hope that I am not misunderstood. I definitely like the combat. I just saw ways for it to improve, specifically as regards like turning it into squad based kind of thing. Like I would have loved for this to be like a like a tactical kind of thing. Just really, it's the AI. There was a huge opportunity to make it to make your companions really useful, and just kind of like doing a thing and waiting kind of got under my skin a little bit. That said, it's not that I disliked it, so I hope that it didn't come across that way.
Yeah, and far be it for me to defend Cole in anything, but for the record, Cole loves JRPGs. Like he's not against turn-based combat in general, and also and this I thought about this after we recorded. The combat controls, which you didn't come to until partway through the game. That's probably just a relic of the fact that manuals were part of the experience at this time. Yeah. So you would have known that if you would have read the manual when it came out. That's not the case now, and it wouldn't have solved the problem. But as much as like I love Fallout 2, like I also wish you can control your companions. I would have liked that.
Yeah.
If you turn the speed all the way up, like it's not. Like the waiting didn't bother me so much, but just being able to make them not shoot me in the back, would have been nice.
That's the big thing. And I figured that out. Like about maybe, I think around the den, I cranked up the combat speed, just because I knew it wouldn't affect my ability to make decisions or anything. And as long as you're paying attention, you can see what happens to who and whether or not that pile of skeletons contains a companion or not. Yeah.
I knew the skeleton. Yeah. The last 4 years.
Yeah. So that was the only downside I could foresee to combat speed. I was like, I just need to pay attention, which that's fine. And the combat, like I probably did equally as much combat before getting the combat controls as after, and it was a marked improvement. But still, just that recognizing a way to improve this that would make it more like the kind of game that I wanted to play, while still appreciating the game that it was.
I wish we would have thought to ask that to Chris, like if there was ever a thought given to that, because it's definitely an intentional thing that the series has done the whole time. Even though you can't like stack companions in the newer games, you've never been able to get direct control of them. And I wonder if that's something that is a philosophical base, or if it's just a different preference.
Yeah,
kind of to it.
This will sound. This is a weird way to say it, but I figured that decision was probably above his pay grade.
It's possible that it went, maybe. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
who knows how important that is?
Yeah,
or like not how important, but like what level?
Yeah, like how integral it is to the core of the Fallout experience. So yeah,
if I can go back and pretend that I had said "Alas, poor Sulik," I knew him well when I made that joke. I wish I had said that. So if everyone can go and rewind that and replace that in my mind with a more clever comment, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Christopher.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I also, just talking about the combat real quick, I also think it falls down the less cover there is. In the times you're doing this in a big open area, it's essentially like JRPG combat, but where you can't control your companions, which is frustrating. When just two people standing in a field facing each other and shooting each other, like that's not even that fun for me.
It's like that White Stripes video.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, and that's not good for anybody. The when there's cover and everything, that's where I think the combat kind of comes alive. Enem says via contact. I wanted to talk to you about my experiences with Western RPGs as I look through the lens of Fallout 2 Fall Harder. I have a rut that I fall into when playing Western RPGs, most notably of the Bethesda and Obsidian variety, but even with games like Deus Ex. My main issue is that for all the incredible goodwill that the game builds up, they always devolve into list simulators. I started Fallout 2 about a year ago with an iron will, determined that I would actually role-play this RPG, and I did good for a while. I did my best to keep my humanity and help the people of this wasteland, and was crushed to see that I couldn't save the ghost farm in time. I did good up until New Reno, and then this beast of a game could not be held back any longer. I did it all. I save-scummed my Strength 4 female waif into being the heavyweight champion, thanks critical hits to the head. I went nuts, killing, collecting, selling, and managing my weapons collections. My companions became nothing more than walking inventories at that point. I got every weapon I can get my hands on, cleaned out the weapons merchant, and then killed him for his weapon. I became a sociopath whose only concern was managing my ever-growing list of weapons, chems, and caps. It was in New Reno that I ran out of steam. I would like to think that it was because I realized the monster I had become, but really, I just grew weary of the inventory, endlessly shuffling around weapons and items between companions, trying to find containers to store excess goods, and generally obsessing over things that didn't contribute to what makes the game great. I got swallowed by the metagame, as I have with all of my previous Fallout experiences. I truly love games that offer as much depth and freedom in the narrative as Fallout does, but there is something about games like this, where inventory, bartering, and carry weight are central mechanics that cause me to lose focus of the real game in favor of min-maxing for meaningless rewards. And when I spend more time managing my inventory than I do playing the game, I inevitably give up on it, which is a shame on a game as good as this.
Yeah. Awesome letter. You know, that speaks to me. You know, I play, you know, when I'm playing PC games, I have my whiteboard right to the left of me, you know, and so like the notion to make lists and, you know, keep track of things and, you know, take pleasure in crossing them off. I totally understand that. To a certain extent, I want to say, like, play the game however it makes you happy, but it sounds like this didn't make you happy. And, you know, Fallout to me has always kind of like, I spend more of my time managing inventory, like even in the more recent ones as well. And it was true of, you know, Fallout 1 and this one as well, that you spend a lot of time looking at that screen. And, you know, this game is not optimized for that at all. I think that its inventory control, you know, its management system is a weak spot, right?
Yeah. And also I would argue, though, as well at this point, that's something that that's kind of a mark of the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for sure, with Fallout specifically. But I would say with the newer ones, even though the inventory system is a little bit more seamless, they add weapon degradation.
Yep.
So, like, they add more inventory management. And, like, I can see what they're going for there. You know, there's a risk-reward. You know, some of my favorite modern Fallout moments are finding a really valuable piece of loot and having to decide what I can, you know, give up in order to get back to town because I'm hurt and outnumbered. Yeah. Like that creates like a very genuine dramatic situation for me that I go for. Yeah. In kind of a big way. But oftentimes you are just spending time looking at that screen. Yeah. And I don't disagree. Like I don't love it.
But it scratches an itch.
It comes up when it comes up, it's very powerful. Like when it works for me, and then I guess that even happens in Fallout 2, where like I'll run into something that's like, man, I really want this, but can I make it back because I'm hurt? You know, and it happens more in the early game than the later game, but that's one of the things in New Vegas. They eventually released a perk that allows you to fast travel when you're overburdened. Oh wow! And like it kind of like it's easier, but it ruins that aspect. Like kind of like if you don't want that and you just want to take everything, you know, you can kind of turn it on and off. Like I almost feel like that should be a toggle at the beginning of the game. Oh, like, do you want to play with this or no?
Yeah, kind of like is hardcore that way, or can you turn that off?
Hardcore you can turn off, but once you turn it on, I think it stays on. Okay. And then it gives the big difference is it gives ammo weight. Yeah. Which makes a huge difference because in the modern Fallouts, ammo is money. Like you just anything you have extra, trade in your miles of combat shotguns for miles of bullets, and you're sitting pretty. Yeah. But I never go crazy. Like the sociopathy angle of this letter, that I'm not sure what brings that on. I think that it does get boring eventually to kind of manage the list, and I would agree with you there. I don't necessarily see a correlation between kind of going crazy and then doing that. Yeah. So I can usually stick with you know, kind of my play philosophy through the whole game.
Yeah. And, you know, in a 40-plus hour game, I don't think you can be blamed for being a content hound Because like how much of this is dependent on like, oh, I'll come back for this later, and in the next 40 hours that I have to dedicate to playing this game.
Yeah.
So like taking your waif into the boxing ring. If you have a way to do it, and you want to see that
that's
stuff.
That's one thing. But then like they're doing like killing everyone to take their weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's a different thing. Like that's technically content, but it's not really meaningful content.
Right.
Like that seems like two different things. Like one is doing a side quest that you're not spec'd for, which like the game allows you to do that. So I have no problem with that. And you can also drug up for it as well.
Yeah, and you can get the plate, the plate gloves and stuff.
Yeah. There's lots of ways to do that as a I was not a punchy character. I had strength 4, and I became a heavyweight champion. But the just wanting to kill everybody and get all of the weapons and stuff like feels like I don't understand necessarily the relation between that kicking in and then the inventory management thing, other than just the fact that at that point you have more inventory.
Yeah, trying to maximize or optimize. Yeah.
The other thing too is like I'm so conditioned by Western RPGs that I am very conservative with my items, and I started that Dishonored run through, and I will end up with so much of everything in the end of that. Like I'm very conservative and just manage, like it just comes really natural to me at this point. Just to be very take very few liberties with items, that I end up with just kind of a wealth of things earlier than I think is probably average on the curve. So I never end up getting that impulse to like. There's never a need for it,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely right about that. I understand the systems thing. Like conversely, in a different game, like it was one of the big things that's made me not want to pick up Mass Effect again, is how shitty the inventory system is. Like a bad inventory system, you're going to spend a lot of time in inventory, and it makes you kind of yearn for the Final Fantasy. Like this is a list of things. It doesn't matter how many of them you have.
Yeah. And for forever the Mass Effect apologists, they very quickly ditch that, which is nice. But
yeah. Well, it's still after 30 hours of game.
Yep,
like they ditched it at the second one.
Yeah.
So it won't get ditched in this experience. But it's good that they fixed it. It's good that they're improving.
That they learn. Yeah.
Yep.
So continuing on to Jared, who writes in via contact, I want to write again to share some more disjointed Fallout 2 miscellany. Miscellany?
Miscellaneary?
Yeah.
I always thought it was miscellaneary, but there's no R in there.
Yeah, I think you spelled it correctly. Yeah, I always say miscellany, but I've been cope-seed.
Yeah, it's a noun for miscellaneous, so it's probably miscellany.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that's. Somebody correct us.
Yeah. I'll put a marker here and put in the dictionary.com.
Miscellany.
Yeah, get text to speech to say it.
Yeah. So, on the Gecko ending, it's bugged in the vanilla game. If you optimize the power plant and deliver the economic data from Gordon or the brain to McClure, you're supposed to get an ending where the ghouls and the Vault City populace overcome their prejudices to work side by side and create a better future. The ending where Gecko is enslaved happens if you optimize the plant but don't deliver the economic data. This is fixed in an unofficial patch, though I'm not sure if I like the fix better. On one hand, I always enjoy making a positive difference in a harsh, unforgiving world. On the other, that the citizens of Vault City would overcome their dogmatic beliefs just like that seems a bit of a stretch. Moving on, I want to tell you about why Jinxed is such an amazing trait. So, here I was, in a fight with some raiders. By my side were Vic and Sulik. Vic was getting hammered on by the raiders, had 3 hit points left. I tried to get close to him so I could stim pack him back from the precipice of death, but I didn't have enough AP. It was time for the raiders to take their turns, and I was sure Vic was a goner, but then every one of the raiders rolled critical failures, their weapons slipping out of their hands in an astounding streak of bad fortune that allowed Vic to live another day. The next thing I want to talk about is the Talking Deathclaws and Gorus. I can't say it doesn't bum me out that they're all dead canonically, as I quite like Gorus, and I enjoy it when a party member has a personal vendetta to settle against the final boss. I was disappointed when I had to make him sit out of the fight with Horrigan, as he would have gotten Swiss cheesed by the crossfire of turrets and heavy weapons. And imagining raiders shitting themselves as he throws off his cloak never gets old. He's not the most powerful companion, though he can use a power fist if you use S-Fall. I think that's a mod. Enable full party control and put it in one of his quick slots.
Full party control, S-Fall. We were wondering last episode whether someone modded in
Oh,
full
yeah.
party control. Looks like they have.
There we go. Okay, cool. And put it in one of his quick slots, despite the fact that it doesn't make any sense. But he might be one of my favorite companions in the game. Yeah, he has Claw in the name. You're giving him a fist? What?
Yeah, Death Fist.
Death Fist. I can understand why the decision was made to get rid of intelligent death claws and other talking animals, as they're silly, even by Fallout 2 standards. I would have loved meeting Goris in New Vegas as an old, wizened scholar all the same. One last thing, I liked Cole's observations about how going to Chinatown was a trope of PC RPGs from the late 90s and early 2000s. But don't have anything to add to it, I just found it interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Goris would have fit in, I wonder, Old World Blues. They could have put a talking Deathclaw there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if there wasn't like a moratorium on him, but
yeah.
If there was any fondness, he would have fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
Fit in there, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jinx, my run I've done through Fallout 2, my punch everyone in the balls until they die run, which you can do, because I am immature. And because I just wanted to see if you can do it, the way I did it was taking extremely high luck and jinxed.
Yeah, that would be, if I was going to do a gimmick run, it would be 10 luck and jinxed.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
Like everyone just, people are constantly, and they don't just drop guns, they can break limbs on critical failure. So people are constantly like breaking their arms trying to shoot you.
Yeah.
And, like your companions are fucked. Like the trick to a jinxed run is I don't take people with me. Cause, like,
I'm a loner dotty, a rebel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that there's a full party control mod. That might be, I don't know, years down the line.
Yeah, with the restoration patch and just like, okay, this is the last time. Not that, I mean, like I could see every day, I've played this a bunch of times. I never feel like playing it again right after I finish it, but I always end up coming back.
Yeah.
So I'll check out that full party mod and when I do the new updated content restoration patch in a couple of years. I'll probably end up rolling around on Torment again. It's actually like out of those games, like I feel like now that I know the degree to which Chris did it, I need to actually get to Mask of the Betrayer.
Yeah.
Because I'm still slowly working my way through Neverwinter Nights 1 vanilla campaign with my buddy.
Yeah.
And it's like we're having fun, but it's going slow. And I just want to beat the first one for some reason before I get to the second one.
Makes sense.
And finally, to round us out, Paul says via contact, playing Fallout 2 has been one of my gaming goals for a long time. I recognize all the things that make it great, but the Fallout games in particular make me anxious about missing out on content. In prior attempts to play the game, I would spend hours creating a generalist character and then stop playing once I felt I wasn't spec'd for a certain situation. Hearing the greatest hits on your podcast helped me tone down the anxiety, and I recently made it to Vault City on my unarmed character, Punchman. And you can name him Punchy later when he becomes a boxer.
Yeah.
Thanks for spoiling the game for me. Not really. Or no, really. Is there supposed to be a comment there? And thanks for spoiling the game. No, really. Oh,
yeah.
He is. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There we go.
For some reason, I added sarcasm to the first part, even though there wasn't supposed to be, even though it was invalidated right by the...
Yeah.
I understand words.
Uh-huh.
P.S. One of my favorite moments that I don't think you mentioned occurs when you offer to help the head warrior of Sulek's tribe. After asking you to travel through a cave in danger of collapsing, you get the option to say something along the lines of, oh wait, I just remembered I have to save my tribe. Gotta run.
I don't remember the head of Sulek's tribe.
The two things I'm thinking of is like one, either that's from cut content because Sulek's tribe is in the restoration patch.
Okay.
Or he's referring, maybe it's something you can say to Smiley because you have to do Smiley to get Sulek out.
Yeah.
He's referring to one of those two things.
Yeah.
Probably the cut content.
Yeah.
I guess.
That sounds like something Guybrush would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
It is really funny, the idea of like that hurry up and waitness, like you are on this critical mission and you're fucking off and fluffing and doing all this nonsense and being able to be like, oh shit, everybody's in danger.
Gotta run, look at the time.
You just spend a bunch of time, playing blackjack and then you go out and go to sleep and Hanneken gives you a nightmare of his desiccated, near corpse. It's kind of...
Oh man, the jerky Hanneken.
Yeah. Yeah, Hanneken jerky.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I had a lot of fun playing and talking about Fallout 2.
Yeah. This is a really good. This is one of my favorite double episodes we've done. So between the interview and just kind of everything together, it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. So thank you everybody for writing in. We really appreciate, especially these, well, if we had a bunch of responses, the essay length probably would have been edited down, but you've all been very thoughtful with that. And, it's been great. So thanks for playing along with us. And, especially to Paul, anytime we can help, eliminate anxiety as opposed to contribute to it. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah. Any anxiety that you lose just gets sucked into Cole. He's a vampire for it. So
oh man, it's like how all electrons flow into the earth. I am the ground for your anxiety.
For which anxiety just flows.
Yeah. Oh man.
And it's been super fun. What are we doing next time that everyone has opportunity to still comment on?
Yeah, so you can still comment on Snatcher, which you can after a couple of hours of trying to figure out emulate on both Windows and Mac.
Yeah, Google it, and then Google how to Google it.
Yeah,
after you Googled it.
Yeah, so first Google it, and then if you can't figure that out, go to the Google, and then ask a friend to use "Let me Google that for you" to point it out to you.
And just keep working on it. We both had technical problems on this. How much? I lost 2 hours initially. What did you lose?
Oh, I didn't really lose anything. It's just that the cutscenes didn't have any audio, and I just
gotcha.
and once I figured out what the problem was, I just listened to the audio.
Yeah, or watch them on YouTube or something.
Yeah. So it's a visual novel, and as such, it is a national treasure. Much in the way that Deus Ex likes are a national treasure.
Yes, it's very fun. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Like it's funny. Mm-hmm. Like it's actually like I find it to be. Out of Kojima games so far, like I don't want to make any declarative statements because they're not all fresh in my mind. Mm-hmm. But it's the most I remember laughing at a Kojima game. Yeah. So it's very funny. So that's great.
Yeah.
What a good. Yeah.
I'm incredibly excited to talk about it at length, but you still have an opportunity to respond. So if you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, we're recording on Saturday. So just give us a response, on Friday at work when you're thinking, fuck this place, and and we'll read it.
Yeah, and then after that, we're doing Dishonored.
Yeah.
Revenge solves everything. So the second episode of Wolf. I'm looking forward to that as well. Have you started that yet, Cole?
No, I have not, but I fully intend to sometime this week after I play my Abject Suffering games.
Yeah.
Which is another show on the network.
Yeah, speaking of segues, listen to all of our shows on the network. Mm-hmm. Abject Suffering, where Cole and I play bad games. Mm-hmm. Bonfireside Chat, where we play games with souls in the title, including Souls Blazer and Dark Souls 2, the Game Maker 999 game that came out that nobody wants to play. Yeah. We're working through Demon Souls. We're going to make an announcement very soon about what we're doing for the third season of that. Mm-hmm. So if you're into Souls games, I really can't think of a better podcast for you. It is very specialized. Cole does a show called The Level with some of his friends. It is an audio magazine, talks about new games, talks about just kind of what you play in, things in the news, etc. There's a heavy fan interaction part where you can ask them questions and give them discussion prompts, and they'll do the same on their Facebook, so it's definitely worth checking out. He does a blog called Hexcrank. Not Heck Crank. That's the PG version. Yeah. Heck Crank. I do Heck Crank. Cole, what are you doing to post on Heck Crank? Heck Crank.
Yep.
Quack.
Just
Hex Quack, I think is what it. Hex Quack.
Fits with the network. You're spiraling, Gary.
Yeah. Hex Crank, which is a exhaustive examination of the history of survival horror in video games.
Yep. Just did an article about a horrible game called Personal Nightmare.
Personal Nightmare, those games that are made by that company and those Elvira games. When I had a subscription to like electronic computer gaming or one of those, like in the late 80s and early 90s, all video game magazines were just combinations of those words. Yeah. So it was like either like computer gaming, electronic, or like something like that. It wasn't EGM, but it was specifically about PC games, which was weird because I didn't have a PC. I think some relative got it for me just knowing I liked video games. Right. And I used to sit there and just stare at like reviews of those games lustfully. Like not horny lustfully because of Elvira, not dick lust, but game like
bloodlust.
Stoked game boners for them because I loved adventure games. But at the time, like all I played was like Maniac Mansion and Shadowgate and stuff. And I'm like, this looks like Shadowgate. Oh my god, I can't believe these are out there. I can't play it. Oh, and here's Willie Beamish. It looks like Maniac Mansion. And just like freaking out about not being able to play these games. Yeah. And it's great to hear that they're all terrible and I should never play them. And Yeah, that they're killing you softly.
Yeah, no, and hopefully I was able to make some light out of it.
You dissuaded me from playing it successfully.
Yeah, well, like it shows up on GOG for like $1.50, and you're like, it's a horror game. I love horror games.
Yep, but you don't love this horror game.
Yeah, and also any opportunity to casually reference Ghoulardi, I will take.
Yeah, Sven Gooley in Chicago, Ghoulardi in Cincinnati.
Yep, he is Sven Gooley, and then Cincinnati just had the Ghoul.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, what a cool thing. I think I've told you this before, but the character I wanted to make if I ever played a tabletop game and did a modern superhero game was a character like that who gained necromantic powers, but was just like a harmless old fart.
Yeah.
But he just had serious necromantic powers. So he'd be like, like hosting old monster movies and know all this monster lore, but he was just this, harmless old dumbass who did some creature feature.
Yeah.
Kind of thing like that.
God, I love that phenomenon. Just the creature feature thing. Like,
yeah.
Oh man, just go watch Ed Wood.
Yeah, that stuff's good.
Yeah,
and Mystery Science Theater 3000 and the like.
So good. Continuing, despite that digression, Gary does a bunch of other stuff. Check it out, Comrade, which is an indie games podcast he does with his friend and ours, Nick Glauber.
Yep. The next episode that comes out at the time you hear this features Cole.
Oh yeah,
we're talking about the Stanley Parable and Prison Architect.
Yes. So. Yeah, and you're going to be having other network stars on the on the show as well.
Indeed,
it is really good. Hear it for a spoiler-free kind of like persuasion as to why you should check out these awesome games. In addition, he does Pilot Season, which is an awesome, fun, experimental, quirky variety show, which is a new concept every 2 weeks.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Rate, review, all those things. It's still plenty of time before Christmas, so use the Amazon referral link if you're buying Christmas presents. Yeah. I know I do. So that's really appreciated. And then ratings, reviews, buy my album, do all the stuff, buy our live episode about Mario Kart.
And if you're showing up here because of the My Brother and Me ad, let us know.
Yeah. When does or did that drop?
That is December the 16th.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so look out for that.
Yeah.
And if you're coming here from Chris Avallone's Twitter, when we mention him, welcome.
Yes.
and I hope you like the episode and look for more of it on the network.
Yeah. So. Fantastic. Well, until next time, you should watch out for me beaming about having spoken to Chris Avellone and him being a cool dude.
Super nice guys.
Yeah.
Look out for them.
Watch out for guys
who
watch for them specifically and then have them just be awesome around you.
Those are the people you want to have in your life.
Yeah.
So...
and also outtakes.
Yes.
Hey there, guys. What's going on?
Hey, Chris.
Not much. Hi.
Hey. And this is Cole and Gary. Is that correct?
Yes. This is Cole.
Yep. And this is Gary.
Cole and Gary, it is a pleasure to meet you. I am Chris.
Hey, Chris. The pleasure is all ours.
Certainly. Yeah. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Hey, no problem. By the way, I absolutely love the name of your podcast. It's freaking awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it comes from the movie The Wizard.
I have seen that. Yep.
Yeah, that Nintendo commercial. There's a part where Jeff Bridges is talking to Fred Savage in a hotel room. He's like, he's training Christian Slater on Nintendo, and he's like, we have to get you the latest tips and tricks. And they cut away to like a tips and tricks line, and there's a real 80s looking dude. He's loosened up his tie for the day. He's all sweating. He's like, all right, the important part for this next area is to watch out for fireballs, which is the dumbest advice for an NES game.
Yeah, it's because normally you want to catch fireballs, you collect them like coins.
Yeah.
Which is actually what our D&D party frequently does. They actually do frequently collect fireballs like they're collecting giant gold shiny coins, and it's probably the reason why we die so much. But no, I'm just kidding.
The Twitter post about your D&D room there have made me insanely jealous. I've been trying to get a D&D room into my work, and they're just like, this is a school of business, Butterfield. We have no interest in your dungeons or your dragons.
But we were like, look, it builds camaraderie. Like, you can have discussions, hang out with your friends. It's a very low key activity, sir. It's great for morale building. At least that's the story we stick to. I mean, Gary, it's probably a good thing you weren't there today. We actually play on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the party got split up. Which normally isn't a big deal, but when you only have an hour to play and half the table's waiting around for the other half to break them out of prison, it gets pretty freaking boring.
Yeah. I can safely say with no sense of exaggeration, that it wasn't a good thing that I wasn't there today, and that I would rather have done that than what I did instead, no matter how boring it was.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's actually why they tanked the idea at my work, is because I said it built morale. It's not what they're going for. So.
Yeah, we actually do a whole bunch of gaming stuff at work. We have a board game website, and we play board games during lunch and after hours, and sometimes during the day if it's for research for other stuff. And then we have the D&D room, which we use for like Tuesday, Thursday lunches. And then aside from all the computer gaming that goes on, we also have a poker night every Wednesday night, and that gets pretty intense and scary. So I kind of stay away from that area because I don't really understand poker very well.
Yeah, I thought the place that I worked was cool for having a pool table.
Yeah. Well, if you just put a bunch of MacBooks on it, it's not cool. It's just a table. Yeah. What specific BrainBot from Old World Blues is your icon, Chris?
Oh, that is a very good question. Well, I have feelings about each one of them, and they're not strange or unusual feelings. So I don't want the world at large to judge me for these feelings. But I don't know. I think with Dr. 8, maybe I'm a compulsive masturbator, so maybe like all his side dialogue was probably associated with that. The frightening insecurity that Dr. O/0 has, is always really easy to tap into. Klein, I don't have much in common with. Klein was kind of my attempt to make sure that there was some obvious threat in the think tank, because Klein's the most authoritative one, and I think if he hadn't been there, it would have been like almost impossible to take any of those guys seriously. But Klein was so crazy and aggressive and managerial that he sort of lent weight to the think tank actually hurting or destroying somebody. It was important that he be there. And Dala's just oversexed, so like she and Aid are easily covered. And then
hello.
Uh-oh.
But I thought that I'm sorry, Boros. But I just did think it would be really nice if there was a, brain bot that, you were able to make more human because you reminded him of his dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really appropriate Skype icon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like interfacing through these machines.
Yeah, and Mobius, I think I just tried to model after Tom Baker a little bit. So I always liked him as the doctor.
I just after playing Fallout 2, I kind of got a hankering for some of the New Vegas stuff, and just got done replaying Old World Blues for the second time. Yeah, like literally like the day before yesterday, I just wrapped it up. Did the final thing.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that one, although we were really scared about how the community would react to it because it was so weird. And with the comedy, we were kind of like, well, maybe this is just going way too far. But we figured as long as we didn't break the fourth wall and there was a reason for all that humor, that it was a little bit more palatable than some of the stuff we put in Fallout 2. So I think that was kind of the deciding point there. I think Game Banshee, which is one of like the computer game sites, called us out on it and said, these guys come pretty close to the fourth wall, and even that's not necessarily a great thing, but at least they didn't cross over. So. Yeah. And forgive me, Game Banshee, if I have your quote wrong, but I'm trying to recall it from memory. Yeah.
It's my favorite of the DLC for it, and I like all of them, but I like it as a refresher because the other ones are so serious.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I like how far it goes in that direction. In this playthrough, I ended up doing, those are the only parts of the game I've only done once because I'm a pretty ridiculous Fallout fan, and I did right after Dead Money, and I really love Dead Money, but it is very serious. And then Old World Blues comes, and yeah.
Yeah, one of the goals of HDLC was not only did we want to change the visual look of the environment, we wanted the actual tone of each DLC to feel different. Even though the other three were serious, we tried to make sure that there was a different aspect to that seriousness going. Like, Dead Money was all about like horror and survival, and Lonesome Road was just like, personal damnation alley journey, and Old World Blues is kind of like 1950s science. And then Honest Hearts, I think the project director for that could probably speak to it, but it was a conscious effort to try and make each one feel tone-wise different in addition to all the visuals. And also with Lonesome Road and Old World Blues, part of the problem Well, I wouldn't say problem. I would say design challenge. One of the design challenges with both of those was just opportunities, exactly. Is we had to make sure we could reuse as many assets as possible. So part of the design challenge, opportunity was, hey, well, how, if we do have all these old assets, how can we use them in a way that feels different than how they've been used before? And then Lonesome Row was easy because of all the earthquakes and shattered ground and, canyon buildings. But Old World Blue is just like, hey, they can all be like really cool backdrops and science facilities, and they're all nutty, and there's, I don't know. So we had a blast with those.
Yeah. Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. And you. Yeah, and just get out of the way. I'll probably say it more than once, but thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks for inviting me. I was really flattered you guys asked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just it's one of the I can say without any kind of sense of exaggeration, and that the record will show that I'm pretty consistently a big fan of games that you have your name on. I take any opportunity to talk about Alpha Protocol when we're talking about underrated things.
Oh wow, Gary. That's really that's wow.
Yes. I love it. I love that
Thank
game.
you.
Like, Cole can attest. Like I've tried to get him to play it so many times.
I own several copies of it actually. So.
Yeah, and then we did Torment for the show as well, which is another one of my all-time favorites. So.
That was another title we weren't sure how it was going to be received by the public.
every time you think that, follow your instincts, because I don't know the economics of any of it, but every time you do, you end up making one of my favorite games. So keep it up.
Well, I can't ask for much more then. Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate that. It was very nice to hear.
No problem. Absolutely. I'll as I said, record will show. These all things I've said many times. So super excited.
Yeah.
Waff up the jams.
Yep. So I waff up the jams. Yeah. So I took the liberty of continuing the story from last time.
Yeah. I read this. I said that I made up some Fallout porn names to add in there somewhere, like the producers of. Yeah. Just to throw in some list.
Yeah, like the background, the thank you for calling Golden Globes Films.
Yeah. Creators of. Yeah,
I don't understand ass miners.
Oh, they're just a lot of miners in Fallout.
Oh, okay, ass miners.
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The Wet Valley of Breast Claw.
The only one of these I actually really like is Modoc Mo Dick. Modoc Mo Dick. Hey.
Vicky does Vault City. I like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I figured you'd be
I'm kind of surprised there wasn't a Ghouls Gone Wild as well in the first one. I feel like I'm surprised we didn't come up with that earlier and make a commercial for that, a sketch. Just watch them sit at bar stools, crying into beer.
Oh man, there could be a lot of really uncomfortable overtones to that, most ghouls have no self-esteem.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
these ghouls will do anything for a stim pack.
Yeah.
Hey, Smooth Skin, you want to see my penis? Here it is.
Oh, do you want to see?
Here it is. Give me the Rad-X.
Do you want to see where my penis was?
You can see elements of my penis here, and what remains of it here.
It wandered up to my elbow.
Yeah, I know. You're looking at Smooth Skin. 50 caps.
It's kind of like when a homeless person comes up and squeegees your windshield in the media. I've never had that happen, except he comes up and shows you his dick and demands $50.
5 caps. It's right here. You got the show.
Oh, man. So I figured you could be the comedian.
Sounds good. Are you thinking Rodney Dangerfield, or are you thinking Bob Newhart? Nervous or confidently nervous?
I was thinking just attempting to emulate Jerry Seinfeld, just real hacky, almost Neil Hamburger kind of style.
Yeah. Neil Hamburger is responsible for one of my favorite 2-line jokes in anything in the episode of Tim and Eric that he's in, where Eric Horheim says, Mr. Hamburger, I'd appreciate it if you stopped calling us rapists. And he goes, don't rape.
Oh man.
So good.
Yeah, I didn't realize that most of the public access people that they brought in did Christian shows.
Yeah, a lot of them did.
Yeah, like David Liebhart and oh gosh, one of the other guys that's really hard to look at.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah, James Quall.
Yep, that's one.
Is it? Yep. Yep.
Really
Sailing
hard to look
College.
at.
Yeah, he is hard to look at. And they really play it up too. Like he's not that hard to look at without makeup.
Yeah.
But they really bring out that rosacea.
Yeah.
That guy.
I need to go back and watch those. It's been an age.
It's been. I think that when the producer comes into the fluffing room, it's not necessarily like I know he says he's going into the fluffing room. I think that we need to do some background noise or have the so the idea that the comedian has fallen on hard times and has turned to fluffing.
Yeah.
Has to be underlined just a little bit.
Okay.
Something I was thinking about, like, where are we at? In the first line where he said, full chub, half chub, what are we looking at? Maybe have one of the porn stars be like, he's not doing so good, or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Something implying that there are dudes in there that he's fluffing. And then every once in a while, or not every once in a while, because it would be gross, but I was thinking about starting the comedian line with something, like a...
Oh yeah,
some kind of.
That's actually something I was actively trying to avoid when writing this.
So, you don't want wet noises?
Nope. I don't. There are very few lines that I'm not willing to cross. However, putting audible cocksucking noises in a sketch.
Well, I wasn't going to do multiple noises. It was just going to be him disengaging. But I feel like there should be something in there implying that he was just previously fluffing or about to fluff.
Yeah.
Whatever the Latin is for to fluff.
Fluffus.
To fluffed.
Yeah.
But one of the porn star guys just being like, he's not like he ain't, something like that. I think we'd probably do it.
Okay.